Eddy Merckx, the Cannibal, the most dominant cyclist in history. With an unmatched hunger for victory, he crushed his rivals and rewrote cycling history. But which moments truly defined his legendary career? Let's dive into the 10 greatest highlights of Eddy Merckx. July 14th, 1975. The Tour de France is in full swing. Eddy Merckx is chasing his 6th Tour victory, ready to solidify his place as the greatest cyclist of all time. But then, something shocking happens. On the climb of the Puy de Dôme, the road is packed with fans, cheering and pressing dangerously close to the riders. Suddenly, from the crowd, a spectator throws a punch straight into Merckx's stomach. The impact is brutal. Merckx gasps for air, struggling to maintain his pace. Despite the pain, he refuses to give up. He keeps pushing, just as he always has. But this time, something is different. The punch has done more damage than anyone realizes. As the race continues, the pain lingers, and then disaster strikes again. In the final stages of the tour, Merckx crashes hard, fracturing his cheekbone. Most riders would abandon the race, but not Merckx. Even with broken bones, he keeps going, determined to fight until the very end. Yet this time, the Cannibal is human. His greatest rival in this tour, Frenchman Bernard Thévenet, senses weakness and attacks. Merckx fights, but the injuries take their toll. Thévenet seizes the yellow jersey, and for the first time in his career, Merckx is defeated in the Tour de France. He finishes second, a heartbreaking but heroic effort. It would be his last Tour de France. His days of total domination were over. March 30th, 1969. The Tour of Flanders, one of the most prestigious and brutal one-day races in cycling. Cobbled roads, relentless climbs, and fierce competition. But on this day, a 23-year-old Eddy Merckx delivers one of the most dominant performances the sport has ever seen. Just months later, in October 1969, Merckx arrives at the start of the Tour of Lombardy with the same ruthless mindset. The race of the falling leaves is known for its grueling climbs and punishing distance, but Merckx is unfazed. This victory cements his dominance in the sport. Winning both the Tour of Flanders and the Tour of Lombardy in the same year is an achievement reserved for only the greatest riders, and Merckx makes it look effortless. Merckx won a staggering 8 stages, including several mountain stages, sprint finishes, and time trials, showcasing his all-around abilities. His victory in the general classification was part of his larger dominance in the sport at the time. He would go on to win 5 Tour de France titles in total, cementing his legacy as one of the greatest cyclists in history. Merckx's 1970 Tour de France performance stood out not just for the number of stage wins, but for the manner in which he did it. He was aggressive, fearless, and relentless in his pursuit of victories. His victory in the 1970 edition was his first Tour win, and it marked the beginning of his reign over the race, along with his victory in the overall classification. Merckx also won the points classification and the King of the Mountains jersey, making him the most complete rider in that edition of the race. Merckx's dominance in the 1970 Tour de France was symbolic of his approach to racing. He attacked relentlessly, never resting on his laurels, and was always a threat in any race he entered. Eddy Merckx's first victory in the Giro D'Italia in 1968 was a significant moment in his career and in the history of cycling. At just 23 years old, Merckx claimed his first Grand Tour victory, marking the beginning of his incredible career, dominance in the world of cycling. Merckx entered the 1968 Giro as a relative newcomer to the top level of professional cycling, but it quickly became clear that he was no ordinary rider. He had already shown promise in smaller races, but the Giro was his first major test on a Grand Tour stage. Merckx demonstrated his incredible versatility during the race. He won 4 stages in total, showing his ability both in the mountains and in the sprints. His ability to perform in such diverse terrains showcased the all-around strength that would define his career. Despite the challenges he faced from strong riders like Gianni Motta and Felice Gimondi, Merckx emerged victorious. In the general classification, he finished the Giro with a comfortable lead, proving that he could compete with the best in the world. Eddy Merckx's victory in the 1968 Giro d'Italia not only launched his career, but also marked the start of his incredible reign over the Grand Tours. It was a statement of his strength, determination, and incredible talent, foreshadowing the greatness that was to come in the following years. Two names stand out in the history of the Ronde van Vlaanderen: Eddy Merckx and Freddy Maertens. Their rivalry would shape the race for years to come, but in 1975, it was Merckx who triumphed in the Tour of Flanders, securing one of the most iconic victories of his career. The 1975 Ronde van Vlaanderen was a classic battle, with the Belgian giants going head-to-head on the cobbled climbs of Flanders. Freddy Maertens, a strong sprinter and incredibly talented rider, was one of the favorites to win. But Merckx, already a legend at this point, was determined to add yet another monument to his collection. As the race progressed, the peloton was whittled down, and it became clear that it would be a duel between Merckx and Maertens. Both riders had the power and grit to dominate the tough terrain, but it was Merckx's unmatched strength and experience that ultimately won the day. On the final climb, the Koppenberg, Merckx launched a decisive attack that no one could match. Merckx powered away from the field, displaying the sheer willpower that made him one of the greatest cyclists in history. Despite Maertens' efforts to close the gap, Merckx crossed the finish line alone, taking the victory with a display of dominance and control. In 1972, Eddy Merckx accomplished something that would forever cement his place in the cycling history books. On October 25th, in the high-altitude velodrome of Mexico City, Merckx set out to break the prestigious World Hour record, a feat that would test not just his physical strength, but his mental endurance as well. The hour record is one of cycling's most iconic challenges, where a rider must cover as much distance as possible in 1 hour, riding on a flat track. At Mexico City's high altitude, the conditions were ideal for breaking the record, and Merckx, already one of the greatest cyclists of his time, was determined to leave his mark. Merckx's attempt began under the watchful eyes of the world. For 1 hour, he would race against time, pushing his body to the limit. With each lap, his legs burned, but Merckx's relentless spirit refused to back down. He was driven not just by the desire for victory, but by his passion to become the best. At the end of the hour, Eddy Merckx had ridden a distance of 49.431 kilometers, breaking the previous record by an incredible 1.3 kilometers. It was a jaw-dropping performance, and it made Merckx the new holder of the World Hour record, a title he would hold for over 12 years. What made this achievement even more impressive was that it wasn't just a victory in one of cycling's most brutal tests. It was a statement of Merckx's all-around dominance, proving that his abilities went far beyond the Grand Tours and one-day races. Whether it was climbing, sprinting, or racing against the clock, Merckx was the complete cyclist. In 1969, a young and hungry Eddy Merckx made his debut in the Tour de France, and what a debut it was. Merckx, only 24 years old, wasn't just riding for the experience, he was there to win. And in an unforgettable performance, he did just that, claiming his first ever Tour de France victory. It was a tour full of drama, power, and grit. Merckx didn't just win the overall classification, he dominated. Throughout the 2,800 kilometers of the race, he won 7 stages, including the prestigious mountain stages, and also claimed both the King of the Mountains and the points classification. His all-around strength was unparalleled, with Merckx proving himself to be not just a sprinter or climber, but a complete package capable of conquering any challenge the Tour threw his way.